Jason, you're muted.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and to some of you, good evening. My name is Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the channel and haven't done it, please hit the like and subscribe button. And most importantly, don't forget to hit that notification bell, as we're constantly adding new shows to the channel and doing crazy, unpredictable cross streams all the time. Just last week, we did the 6-hour Sublation magazine launch, the new media company and magazine started by former Zero Books editor Doug Lane. Most, if not all, of the TIR crew will be having pieces in the magazine. I finally finished mine, that TIR crew member Djene Bajalan edited from 3,500 words down to 1,500. Said I got 2 words. That's fine. He actually said it's supposed to be like 1,200. And he goes, we're going to try to get it down to 15. Let's hone this argument in a little bit. So I'm excited for that. Apparently Doug Lane is reviewing it. So fingers are crossed that it sees the light of day. And also Thursday, this past Thursday, we did a cross stream with our friends at 99 Zoo 1. And one of them is Daniel, is a musician as well and plays metal. And he wanted to do a show about metal and politics. So that actually went a lot longer than I thought. And it was a fun conversation about the kind of the revolutionary capacity of music and looking at metal. I don't really, as a person that loves metal, as you can hear from the music that I do, I don't really think it's revolutionary, so to speak. That being said, let's bring in our This is Revolution Saturday crew co-hosts. First and foremost, coming all the way live from somewhere in Northern Virginia. He's a podcast superstar now, as he has his own call-in show where he actually talks about music as a revolutionary force. He is Marcus of the Left Flank Vets.
Ooh. What's up? Yeah, and actually had a good show yesterday. You could find on Revolutionary Tracks, and Colin had a talk with Dr. Gerald Horn about Paul Robeson and the
Gerald Horn returned your email, huh?
Well, not mine. He returned car things.
How did he do that, Marcus?
I think this isn't the first person that Karthik's been able to get in contact with that you and I have not been able to. So I think it's something that Karthik is doing that we are not.
Usually Karthik has the Indian card, because I'll be honest, Kashama Sawant wouldn't return the email. Karthik,
that fucking that caramel skin with that accent and that last name cannot be denied.
Cannot be denied. You know, we should ask Karthik to hook us up with Aaron Dottie Roy.
We could talk. But I mean, honestly, it was good shit. But then that's the thing too, is like I think one of the understandings is like with the capacity, or what you like as far as like the capacity for revolutionary action based off of art is going to be limited in like the results. You know what I'm saying? Like no one's going to listen to a song and then be like, all right, I'm about it, you know.
I don't know. But isn't that how hip hop is supposed to work? Like you listen to a song and then you learn. I definitely learned how to cook crack cocaine through hip hop.
I mean, that and I
up there and everything.
I mean, Dead Prez will teach you how to get through a few scams if you listen to Hell Yeah.
Right, that whole scam rap shit. They leave everything out there. I committed the robbery like this.
And I know, like, and speaking of Paul Robeson specifically, it's not just about the music, you know, there's action behind it and everything like that. Not to say like, you know, the dude was perfect, but a good you know, I guess a good centerpiece as like, what is a revolutionary artist, you know, and what is their capacity to support the movement? And I say support the movement, not lead the movement, not create the movement. Yeah, I think that's like one of the more things. Like the main focus is like, yeah, no one's gonna make a bop that's gonna like, crush capitalism. It'd
Are
be
you sure?
nice.
Because I think Bono is pretty much.
Ugh.
Well, speaking of Bono, let's bring in our other co-host. There's really nothing that he has in common with Bono other than their hair. You know him as the Zoomer freedom fighter, or is he a millennial? Is he a millennial or Zoomer? I'm confused.
Maybe a
Is he a
young
zillennial?
millennial.
Is he a
Young,
zillennial?
yeah, the in between.
He is Stefan Bertram Lee, aka Thor Guevara. Stefan,
Is he frozen? Oh,
is he frozen?
No, I was just worried that I've invited a guest who's just not going to turn up.
Hey, that's happened to me before, but this will be the first time it wasn't an old person, so now we can't blame it on age. Alfred McCoy did not show up.
which actually funny about the interview too is like with Colin, we asked like Dr. Horn, like, hey, this is this new app. You kind of got to download it on your phone. He was like, I'm not downloading shit for y'all. He said it politely, right? He was like, but like, yeah, it was basically like, nah, that's not happening. So we did a pre-record, but it'll happen. It'll happen.
Hey, I just want whoever made a comment about Tim Pool and me wearing beanie just to know that motherfucker didn't start wearing beanies. I've been wearing beanies.
We're all not dressed like we're in May.
Yeah, it's overcast.
Like in hot places with me.
So please don't ever make a Tim Pool joke because that dude is not entertaining to me whatsoever.
Well, the thing is too is that like you do shows without the beanie on, right?
Yes.
You're not scared of people seeing your bald head.
He's not a man of the beanie.
Yes, yeah.
I think dude wears that beanie, so if he takes it off, you wouldn't know who he was.
He'd look fucking 68 whenever he takes it off. But that's the thing is like there's like some rally or whatever, and somebody takes off his beanie, and like he literally flips shit like a kid at the fucking schoolyard,
It's like his source of his powers. Did you fiddle with the dials, Marcus, or did your cat leave?
No, he's still there.
His cat could be. So Marcus is using a green screen, and he rarely uses a green screen, but right now his green screen, if he sits back too far, it's like the Invisible Man.
It becomes an apparition.
Or a vampire that's just walked by a mirror.
Yeah.
It becomes an apparition or is revealed as an apparition. Marcus is only always in your head. Only black guy in Maine, no such thing.
It's all an illusion.
I'm still in Maine. Hunting white.
That's the thing too. Maine isn't even real, right?
Marcus is a cryptid.
Once he passes, just Canada. It's just Canada.
Gerald Horn is like one of the few people that after I interviewed him, he definitely asked me specific questions. Like, so how many people is this really reaching?
Oh, damn.
Like, how serious am I gonna take you?
I think if you have over 1,000, then that's cool.
Oh, I was first starting out when it was still audio only.
All right.
And I was like, I'm getting like 100 a day, so maybe like 1,000 a week if I'm lucky. And he went, huh.
Well, there's one part of the interview where I was just like, I agreed with him. I was like, oh, just like I can't even like remember specifically. It's like, oh, it's maybe applied to this, and he's like, specifically, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Fuck. And now I'm in
He'll
class.
ask you questions. He'll ask you questions.
It's like shit.
Oh man, specifically, what do you mean is a deadly question? Because often I've got no fucking idea.
Yeah, that's like I referenced his fucking book in the answer, so I was like, this has got to get me off the hook, and he moved on, thank God. But
oh, you read the Paul Robeson book?
Yeah.
That's actually a good book. I like the Paul Robeson book. I like Gerald Horne as a person. He's actually kind of funny dude. He actually did me a solid. So as I make these jokes about him, I don't want anybody to think that I'm shitting on Gerald Horne, who will forget more about a lot of shit than I'll ever learn.
Yeah.
They sent it off to the Monthly Review, which was one of the bigger socialist publications around, and Monthly Review ran the show, and I went from getting like, if I was lucky, like 120 views to thousands, because they did that. So shout out to Joe.
When did you join, Marcus?
What's up?
Well, how did you join TIR, and what were the circumstances?
Oh, that was in the early days too.
Yeah,
so that's 40.
Yeah, which Jason had reached out, and I can't even remember what the fuck was going on. It seems like a decade ago now. But yeah, Jason reached out to Left Flank and was like, hey, you're a bunch of veterans that are like seem to be doing something a little bit differently than any other vets group, like what's up? And so me and one of the members, Dick, who actually has fucking COVID right now, is like sick as fuck.
Is he sick? Is he actually sick?
Yeah, he's and it's like one of the, I don't know the term, it's like less serious cases, but like you're still hemmed up, like you're still pretty fucked up. But yeah, we went on. I think we just I don't even know what the hell we were talking about, but like obviously we were just shooting the shit, bullshitting, had a good time. Came back a few months later, and then by that time, I think Jason and I were just talking a few times a week.
They wouldn't show their faces back in the day, right? They wouldn't show their faces, and this is and I've never said this on air.
This is during the fascist regime of Donald Trump.
I was still working in Congress when I started.
Right, nice.
He didn't want to show his face. Actually, him and Dick wouldn't really show their face. And so Marcus, we talked for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and he goes, well, I'm a black man. I'm like, yeah, I know. There's no.
You didn't know.
I don't know who you've been talking to that doesn't know.
You just throw it out there, right? You got to make sure. Which actually reminds me of so Jen Psaki is going to MSNBC. She's
speaking of
getting replaced by Karine Jean-Pierre. Literally the first thing that she says.
Pascal Robert wrote a very great piece in Black Agenda Report. So if M. Toussaint is around, Pascal wrote a piece on Jean St. Pierre and kind of the problematic nature of her and kind of race reductionist representation.
The first
matters.
Thing, the first thing.
Here, let's move Marcus to the forefront here while he goes off on Jean Pierre.
Cool. And this is more on Psaki. Yeah, this is more on Psaki and what you were just kind of saying of this absolutely fake, let's put identity in the forefront, which is a staple of the Biden administration. Jen Psaki yesterday says, hey, we're announcing the new press secretary coming up in a month. Karine comes up and she's like, this is the first Black woman to be press secretary. And this is the first LGBTQ person, and representation matters. Literally the first fucking sentence. And then says she worked for Obama twice, MSNBC. Then starts to actually talking about why does this person have the professional skill set to be here? It's wild to me how people don't see it. Even thinking about last week's show. This is something that they will put out there fervently in order to get the response that they care about Black people or the queer community or any of these things. But it's all just black faces in high places, right? And that's it, and that's all.
She's kind of black faces. She's the intersectional black faces in high spaces wet dream come true, because she's highly educated. She has a partner that's also a big media figure, right? Has a show on MSNBC or something. So it's kind of like it's like the wet
blackface?
dream of liberalism.
What about
Yeah.
blackface in high places, but it's just people wearing blackface?
In
Which
high
that's what
places,
they do.
Ted Danson.
Who's the fucker in Canada?
Oh,
Yeah,
fuck,
almost
Trudeau.
Trudeau.
Trudeau. Yeah.
What's his first name? Gary, Jack, Johnny.
Justin.
Is this something a bit French?
No, it's whatever he is.
It was
What's
gonna be
the
He's done it
problem
so
with
many times. When they were like, "Are there any more photos of you that may arise?" He was like, "I don't know, man."
I did a lot. Come on.
Yeah.
That was between that and Justin. Thank you, Denarchist. There was another. Who was the guy? I think he was a governor or a congressman in Virginia, in your state of Virginia.
Yeah. The
He
last
also got in trouble with blackface, and his rationale, his excuse was, well, I was doing a Michael Jackson impersonation for a talent show, and a reporter yelled out,
Jackson's white, so
a reporter yelled out, "Show us the routine." And he got all excited and started trying to do this shit.
Yeah.
And his wife was like, "What is wrong with you?"
That was fantastic. You want to see the dance? Actually, speaking of blackface, though, it's one thing interesting about Paul Robeson is that I think one of the first theater gigs that he had in the UK, they put him in whiteface.
Oh boy,
They had a fucking a white man mask that they put over him because he was like, just they're like, oh, he's a fantastic actor. That voice, right? You can't get away with that voice. Oh, the skin though, and they literally put him in whiteface. Yeah.
Like someone mentioned Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder. I was not offended by that role at all because I thought the whole role was a joke.
Yeah, yeah.
To me, it was a joke on liberalism. That's how I looked at it.
Yeah, because that was the last time you could have a movie which did that. Couldn't do it anymore.
You don't think so?
No, definitely not. Not a Hollywood movie.
I mean, were you on the show, Stefan? Was that a weekend show where we did the episode where I do the trigger warning where the teacher brought in the thing of cotton?
Oh yeah. So I don't think you're there.
No, I think I've heard stories online where people are posting about like how in high school they went on trips to like pick cotton, and now they're like, "What the fuck was that about?"
So I've seen that video, and the dude's like, "Yeah, literally, like they took us and they fucking made us pick cotton, and like they wouldn't even let you keep
you
the cotton.
You don't get to keep the cotton.
You literally were a fucking slave. But this teacher just brought in a bowl and some cotton so that the students could just touch it and feel
and see how hard it is to actually pick.
Oh, okay.
And then people like lost their fucking mind.
Some mom was like, she had a half black son, and somehow touching cotton triggered half
memories.
Yeah, like half of the kid got all. She's like, how dare you do this to half of my son? Because half of him isn't going to be. He came home, he half-ass cried all night. All of a sudden, welts showed up on his back.
But the other half is saying, "Get back to work."
Yeah, the other guy's like, "Damn, I loved when I used to sell this shit."
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine, like, you're just like shopping in a fucking store? Well, obviously, Stefan, you can't imagine this, but Jason, we can imagine, right? You're looking for another shirt. You touch the cotton, and it's like all of a sudden, like the flashbacks of whippings that we never had.
Black Mirror episode. Like, oh! I think I said it on that show where I was trying to work out with elastic bands. And I was at a park and I tied it around a tree and it snapped and hit me in the back. And at that moment, I was transformed into a scene from Roots, and I was hollering and running around the park. And the woman I was dating at the time was doubled on the ground in laughter because she had never seen. Because it must have looked like Benny Hill. Because I was like, ah! And I just started running, and right then I knew.
Yes, at that moment, the trauma, the historical trauma of the ancestors
was passed down.
Marcus, do you know the Iraq veteran guy, Seth Harp, who's a journalist now?
Yeah.
Seth Harp.
I mean, I don't know him personally, but I know who you're talking about.
I mean, your account follows on Twitter, but I guess lots of your account follows a lot of fucking people. But he was the guy who did. You remember, like the first big article about Yepega International guys which was in Rolling Stone, where they called Bracebuild an anarchist. Anyway, he did that article, and he's been in Ukraine for the past month, and he's just done an episode on War Nerd with him and on War Nerd talking about Ukraine, because it's kind of weird, but we don't really hear anything about what's actually going on in Ukraine in terms of what's happening to the Ukrainian army. Like, we hear about every single Russian tank that's been blown up, but like Ukrainian casualty figures, what's actually going on with the Ukrainian army and so on, is like completely concealed, and it's due to like Western journalists like completely self-censoring. So he was a guy that's been there, and he was meant to go there to report on like the Ukrainian International Legion, but he's gone there and he says it basically doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. There's like scattered like former special forces guys, but there's no mass Ukrainian Legion. They like tried it out for a few days and it didn't work basically, and they just gave up on it. And he's just been traveling around. They don't let him go anywhere near the front line. In these kind of towns where there was massacres by the Russian military, journalists weren't allowed to like travel around them even after they were cleared of Russian forces. They were instead taken like tight tour guides by the military, like in like locked on certain routes and stuff. Like they weren't allowed free access at all. They wouldn't be allowed into military hospitals or anything like this. And like all the stuff that Western journalists are putting out isn't like actual investigative reporting, but rather there's like media centers produced by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, and journalists just hang out there and they get given press releases by the Ukrainian military, and then they just publish them.
So I mean, that's stenographers for the government. Yeah. Which you could say that about a lot of White House correspondents as well, that they're just.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm sure Western journalists find it very easy to adapt.
That's like any.
Chris Hedges talks about that in War as a Force That Gives Us Meaning. That a lot of people really aren't out there in the real front lines, and they're just kind of chilling at hotels.
I mean, that's like, because the thing is, I was like, of course they do. Of course you do. Yeah. Because no one wants to be instantly cratered. That's what happens on the front line of war. And like, hell, like talking shit, like my older brother was an artilleryman. Now, this is a training event. He accidentally sent around into, a fake town, right? We have these like fake towns that you do room clearing stuff. Yeah. He's a mile away. They're doing training. Supposed to accident, right? One goes off.
Yeah.
Like, and these things like that's like, like accidents happen.
Yeah.
But then you could go into like the actual targeted strikes that can go on. Like, of course these journalists aren't fucking going there because people get fucking killed. And like, why would they? Why the fuck would they?
But like, these guys aren't even like traveling around like the safe bits of Ukraine. They just sat in fucking a hotel and live, being stenographers, as fucking Jason said.
But that's
you're gonna get a book deal from it. You're gonna get a book deal from it if you're lucky. If you can finagle enough bullshit, you can get a movie deal from it. Like, let's be honest.
This guy was saying that he went to like a press conference with Zelensky, and like all the other Western journalists, just the only question they asked him were like, "Are you getting enough like military stuff?" can we get you
Yep.
more? Like, how much? What do you need? What stuff do you need? And it just seemed like they're all just working for Raytheon, you know? They didn't
Yeah,
have
they
any
are.
other questions.
They
That's
are.
frightening, though.
And it's
That's
the same thing. I mean, it's a similar thing with like cops and journalists, right? You know, the cops say this is what happened, and then like, you know, media just immediately just says this is what happened, right? Like, I mean, like it's more of a institutions of power. Um, than I don't know,
Yes,
like
no.
mystified
As someone that
war stuff.
as someone that has had to deal with certain sides of journalists, like, you know, working at shelters, especially when I was at the shelter, a little, a few times, news just kind of shows up Gonzo style. They just take what anybody says as gospel.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, you could be talking to someone that was just had me killing invisible spiders
true.
a second ago and asking them
Yeah.
how's everything going. They'd be like, man, these motherfuckers ain't doing shit, man. I got spiders all over the place.
Well, it's I guess dudes, it's like whatever they want out of it. Because you
Yeah.
go into a coffee shop, right? I'm like, I don't give a shit what any of these motherfuckers have to say. Why would I? But oh, hey Jim, how's it going? Well, since Brandon started raising the gas prices, the fucking trans people took over the world. Thanks, Jim.
Well, this I think kind of leads into our guest. I hope he's okay. I hope he's
I
caught
tried
in.
calling him.
You want to call him on
Oh.
air? 'Cause that'd be really funny.
I
Especially
mean, I guess,
if
I mean, he's
actually,
not
no,
online. He's just not going to pick up. I'll try and call him.
if he's
I know we
just
talked
stoned
about
in his house, that would be even funnier.
I know we talked about this earlier though, but like it's like someone mentioned like the fog of war and all that stuff. Like, but it's funny the Ukraine government just admitted that the ghost of Kiev was fake, like for the first time, like I think earlier this week, and yeah, it's just kind of amazing how many lies are just being spewed out at an absolutely wild rate.
Well, you know, getting into the piece I was writing, a big reason why it was so kind of lengthy. First of all, I was reading two very lengthy writers, Ed Soja and Mike Davis. You know, City of Quartz is like 600 pages long, and Ed Soja also is a urbanist geographer that, you know, when you're talking about the geography of cities, there's a lot of explanation and a lot of context you have to have on why cities are built a certain way, why degrowth and growth happens a certain way, why there's certain kinds of economic sectors in one region and not the other. So it all goes way beyond the idea of just, you know, the wickedness of white people being the only reason why shit happens. But if you were watching the news in the 90s, it was just, you know, there's a drug that appeared on the scene out of nowhere magically, and you know these Negroes can't get right, and it's just the wickedness of white cops, which the LA police force was pretty representative of the city at the time. Actually, if you look at the racial makeup of the police force, it was almost 40% minority in the 90s. It's even more so now. So there's the news media always has a narrative that sells. And I think one thing we always have to keep in mind when we talk about like news media, and even to a certain degree, certain social media personalities, especially the younger ones now that have a much greater grasp of the idea of self as brand. We really have to start, because I don't like the term grifter. I don't think people are con artists all the time, because that also assumes that they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah,
And
I
there's
see most people are genuine. It's a bit,
yeah,
it's
some people are just
like
stupid.
strange to think otherwise.
It's okay to believe some people are just stupid. But, you know, when you think about the 24-hour news cycle, which is very common for us now, and you two actually grew up in it. I remember when CNN was launched. And it was like, this is the dumbest thing ever, because news historically was a loss leader.
Yeah.
So how do you make news
You
something
make it
that sells
entertainment.
more ad time? And you need things that are what people love to watch, and people love to watch racial grievance.
I mean, people also love to watch blow by blow war with like moving maps. So that the Ukraine thing has been great.
Sometimes. Why didn't they love it in the 2000s?
What do you mean they didn't love it in the 2000s? People
They
loved
did.
the war.
Certain people loved it. Not
As an
everybody.
8-year-old, I loved it. I loved the invasion of Iraq. The only thing, when I was watching the invasion of Iraq on 24-hour news as a very small child, not very small, but my frustration was just the fact that the British army had stopped advancing. The British army just secured the southeast of Iraq while the American army pushed and took the rest of the country. And I was like, what the hell? Why aren't we involved more?
Like there was a moment after 9/11 where everyone was glued to the news and generally glued to Fox News because historically that was the news channel, right? It was either going to be CNN or Fox that you were glued to. And this is before anyone has any sort of inkling that there may be a right-wing bend to Fox News's coverage. You just watched it because it was news.
Yeah.
We just did a show with Jen Sanko that did the brainwashing of my dad, and that was kind of one of the things we were talking about with Andrew Hartman and Jen, is that when that big boom in the mid 80s to late 80s started happening of right-wing voices on the radio, you were listening to news radio. So you wouldn't think this is just an opinion. You assume that when Rush Limbaugh is saying something that isn't a fact, it's a fact.
Yeah.
You're not going to double check that because it's the news. Why would the news lie to you?
Yeah, do you think there's probably like laws against that or whatever?
Right? Right? There is and there isn't, right?
Yeah, no, but obviously I think people think there are laws of this kind of thing, even if there aren't. That Seth Harp guy was also saying that he went to the Azov base in Kiev, and above their door they just had written "White Power," like in English.
Oh wow!
In English?
In English, yeah.
Wow.
Why?
Okay.
That's like Karate Kid too. It's like, why is everybody talking English?
I think it's the only like famous and popular like far right slogan which came out of like the Anglo world.
So on the metal show, we were talking a little bit about that because, you know, there's, like, you were telling me about these black metal bands from Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
And he was telling me that he's like, well, they're Aryan because they hate Slavs.
Yeah, that's which like that's something that I found interesting because like the UK, when you know the invasion of Ukraine started up, and then Britain was like, you want us to they're not white, what are you talking about, those are Slavs, we're not letting in these motherfuckers. And it's just like, what?
There's a great like immigration favorability map of UK, and like Polish and Romanian is way lower compared to Indian for British people, and Ukrainians presumably before this war were very low down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I talked about that in my sublation thing, that kind of Ukrainians are Westerners, but they've only been Westerners for about 2 months. And so lots of stuff goes weird and goes wrong because of this, because they think being Westerns are a really different thing. Like Ukrainian sources are always posting in English about how they're like, they've got different genes and stuff to Russians. They're like of a separate genetic origin. And they love calling them orcs, obviously, Russians.
Yes.
Orcs?
Yeah, a lot.
Orcs. Russian nationalists call themselves orcs, and Ukrainian nationalists call Russian orcs.
Interesting.
Because they love Lord of the Rings over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you spend any time in the Ukraine, Stefan?
What?
Did you spend any time in the Ukraine?
No.
Or Russia, right? You never been either one. Marcus, did you spend any time in the Ukraine or Russia?
I didn't go to Europe much.
You didn't go to Europe much?
No.
You were in the Middle East?
Yeah. Or like South China Sea area.
Where, really?
We've gotten a lot of beef. Yeah.
Chinese imperialism.
We got followed by Chinese, Navy ship at some point. And they're like, "Oh, put it on high alert and all this shit." And like, I mean, like as a Marine, like we just sit around, like wait for them to tell us to get off the boat. So like, it was kind of like this weird thing of everyone's just like tracking shit, but it's like, I don't know. This shit happens all the time. Just a bunch of follow the leader around shipping lanes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I know Anton isn't here right now, but I do think I have
He's
two.
dead.
Well, I don't think he's dead. I think he's just stoned at his partner's house.
Yeah, I was wondering if he was just taking MDMA last night.
You said he was taking MDMA.
Well, no, I'm not saying he was, but I'm saying he might be.
Oh, you're saying if he was.
He eventually just like shows up on the screen, just like
Yeah, if he was at a discotheque with his eyes rolling all over the place, maybe.
Anton, are you eating something? Why are you asking?
I'm sure go.
On his face off. If that happened, and that's really where Anton is right now. He's just holed up in a coke dungeon somewhere, just partying. It's okay. It's okay. He's fine. It's the weekend. He's a different guy Monday through Thursday. But that being said, let's I want to talk about this with you guys anyway, because I respect you guys. A question to leftists: are the courts a good way to seek justice? There has been an explosion of protests here in the States due to a leaked Supreme Court document that looks to overturn the already shaky Roe v. Wade decision. This isn't just a domestic issue, as our guest would have explained. But as he explains in his latest article for The Guardian, this is something we're seeing globally. Progressives being forced to fight battles for justice constantly in the courts. Anton Jäger writes, the left-wing embracing of the courts makes sense on one level. In the face of right-wing attempts to restrict basic human rights, the justice system has some of the more powerful tools. Immigration policy is not unique in this regard. Over the past decade, green activists have begun pressing claims against a variety of state actors to hold them accountable for climate inaction. Given the issue's urgency, it is understandable that ecologists would examine a wide repertoire of tactics. Context matters, however. Historically, courts were usually the left's last resort. They offered a pivot when all other routes had been exhausted or political circumstances were simply too hostile. The left relied on a densely organized civil society of unions, parties, and councils which could fight opponents on their own terrain. These parties and unions could run in elections, strike, or rewrite constitutions. Yet they were always skeptical of the idea that progress could be achieved through the courts alone, or that judges were the most reliable guardians of popular power. In the past 40 years, as these bastions of worker power have been atrophied or died out, the left has become isolated and weak, populated by a small cast of professionals, many of them lawyers and academics, who only have a tenuous connection to an organized constituency. In this sense, the embrace of judicial power is itself the expression of political weakness. In the 90s, the third democratic wave elevated the ideal of independent courts together with market economics to a sacred criterion for membership in the global democratic community. Fellas.
I mean, I guess the thing to start with is to talk about kind of, is there kind of left lawfare or is there kind of liberal lawfare? And obviously this runs into the problem then, because I wanted to ask this in regards to America. This then runs into the problem of, is there a US left at all? But I wanted to ask, like, if the US left starts at, say, Bernie or whatever, or is there interest among American leftists in this kind of lawfare thing? Because my impression is it's coming basically from liberals and from like a specific kind of liberal Democrat that we'd probably think of about the worst kind of liberal Democrat, which is different in the UK, which I'll talk about later with Brexit and the Labour Party. Like, I think there is left lawfare in the UK, but I was wondering to you guys if you think there are lots of leftists in the US which are interested in this kind of stuff.
Yes, I think that we did a show, and I want to keep saying this. I can't stress it enough. We did a show 3 months ago. I don't think you were there, Stefan, but Marcus was there with Lillian Chichurchia, and Sarah Mellers, two feminist Marxist scholars, about Roe and what it's really built on. Some of the lowest views we've ever gotten on a show for a Saturday. It's a popular subject now.
Yeah.
And I don't have a very large Twitter presence. I retweeted it, and again, like maybe 10 more people watched it. There's something to be said about the idea of outrage about something you really don't understand, and I think a lot of Americans don't really understand Roe versus Wade and abortion rights as it is, and states' rights. I think all those things from the American context is extremely confusing. And so, and we're at a moment right now where I feel like we're leaning on people instead of leaning on movements or joining movements or being part of anything.
The US Supreme Court is like small enough to be talked about in terms of like actual personalities, right? And then there's kind of lots of fighting. This then, and because it's obviously the final court, there's a lot of focus on there. But if you read about more subtle concerns about the US legal system, it was less about Trump hacking the Supreme Court, but then the Trump administration. I don't think Trump was fucking involved in any actual way. Hacking basically every court across the country.
The federal courts.
Yeah. Well, I think like even going back, though, it's like there is some, which I think the facade is gone. Like right now, other than Supreme Court justices just claiming that the court isn't political, but that was kind of like the design, like with the branches, like not that anyone could just like expect any type of like brilliance from the founding fathers, but like the argument was given that they people would care about being a senator more than they care about what party they're in. You care about being a part of the legislature. You'd care about being an executive. You'd care about being a judge over party, and that those conflicts between the branches would somehow, keep people in line. Checks and balances, as they say, right? Obviously, that's not how shit goes, right? And in which case, the branches are now, devised within the two parties of capital, and then it's just largely just jockeying amongst the two. But when you get into the courts and the law and all of these things, and that's like I don't think, when we say like our left is engaged in this specific legal battle, like I guess in a way, because I think anytime there is some type of like any like mildly popular uprising that has to deal with a popular grievance, amongst the people, it should be on leftists to at least engage that population to see what the fuck is going on, right? That's part of the job. But at the end of the day, though, is that I think when you get into the liberals and the demands that are being made as a reaction to the opinion being leaked, you talk about more Supreme Court justices or like and then the thing is, and it's like or then they're telling like, oh well, we just got to go vote, right? Which is like the most insane shit that they could ever say right now. So I don't think I don't think many leftists are actually saying, oh, we're going to call on Joe Biden to add more Supreme Court picks, but they are engaging in this topic, and I guess I'd hope.
But the people that are engaging in it, though, I feel like are kind of the same people that are part of this class that Anton is talking about. It's a very PMC, highly educated class that has these technocratic solutions to these very complex problems, and it actually comes back to kind of the show we had last week, where the solution to everything is going to be representation. And let a smart person handle it, and we'll keep you people in line, because we know what's best for you.
We're gonna take care of you.
And so it's interesting, like reading, and I read Anton's piece a few times, and then I read all the hyperlinks to the other things that he was talking about globally. But it also led me to another article that came out about a year ago. There was a Supreme Court decision, 8-1 decision, to uphold a ruling where Nestle got sued
for
child labor. And the Supreme Court's like, we're totally fine with little Africans.
Yeah, it's funny that I was just thinking about this in the context of, because I think the first big Supreme Court legal battle that went on for like a decade or more in the US was in the 1840s and the 1850s, which was the slavery debate. And there's various Supreme Court judgments that went one way or another, but weren't able to resolve the issue one way or another. And then it obviously in the end it led to war.
Like imagine if the civil rights movement just stopped with the courts and that was it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Plessy, we're done. Sorry, we can't win this one. The court said it. We just need more Supreme Court justices. We need better Supreme Court justices. We need black Supreme Court justices.
Because Clarence Thomas is
appoint like the first black federal judge at the lowest level, and then wait about 30 years until he can be allowed to be the Supreme Court justice, and then maybe we'll get to civil rights and some shit.
Well, that's and I think this is like the hard thing is how does the left actually have a viable answer? You know, because at the moment now it's like it's just in you know. It's very theoretical, right? If our movement grows and we are successful, then some of these societal ills can be tackled in a way where people are focused. You know, so maybe a simplification, but I think it's like the base thing, right? But like we are trying to build a movement, in which case then some type of political maneuver can be done to secure abortion and then what am I thinking? Reproductive health care, and then going on to like just protections of people getting married. You know, that's like all of the privacy issues that come off of Roe. But like that's the thing is that there is no it's hard to get an understanding of like how someone having an abortion, you know, relates to these privacy laws, and then they're built on that, and what is precedence and all of these things. Really, at the end of the day, you got a group of 9 people who really don't give a shit about you either way, whether you agree with them or not. And then they get to make decisions for millions of people, you know.
But obviously, the thing is, it's not like these Supreme Court justices themselves are thinking about like, the Constitution, the precedent, blah, blah. They've ruled against. They're going to rule against Roe versus Wade because they're fucking all Catholics.
Yeah, and well, the thing is too is that like this is when you talk about the Federalist Society, and I've played like it's the scene in Austin Powers where they're riding on the steamroller and they're like, dude, move, get out of the way. And he's like, stop, right? And they drag it out because he's on the steamroller moving slow. That was like that's like the Federalist Society.
The Federalist Society.
What, fucking 30 years ago? We're just like, we're taking abortion and then we're going to come after so much more. No. And now we are to the point where it's rolling over the person and they're just screaming vote.
It's a shame we can't show clips like on YouTube.
That way we give the DMC8 or some shit.
But I mean, I think the situation's much worse in the UK because I think we do have real kind of left lawfare here, and it's not just kind of Anton brings up in his piece. Obviously, I think Anton was really limited here. I wanted to talk to him about this by the fact that the piece was published in The Guardian. Mm-hmm. We're obviously arch anti-Brexiters, but much more than kind of recent rulings about immigration, which is, of course, kind of these dickheads in the Conservative government getting fought back by the courts, which is like whatever, which I think much more embarrassing and kind of problematic, or whatever word you want to use, use of lawfare in the UK by the left was after the Brexit referendum happened. Large parts of the left then spent like 5 or 6 years using every judicial and legislative approach to kind of try and block this democratic vote by people. And I think that is really being the kind of like, that was a point where I was like, what the fuck is going on? That the left, so much of the left, like the mainstream left in the UK, spent 5-6 years just fighting this referendum, which had passed. And in the end, they did all this, they fought and they fought and they fought. And the most embarrassing thing is in the end they lost. So not only do they completely embarrass themselves as like completely anti-democratic people, and in the end they lost. Which yeah, you can probably see some equivalences with the Democratic Party.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, like, that's the problem with the vote argument, is that, like, the last election was the most important election of our lifetimes. The last election, you were supposed to vote, and if Democrats win, then good things happen. And, like, of
They're going to
course,
pack the courts with good people. They're going to elect good justices. Ketanji Brown Jackson so far, right? We don't know yet,
but that's like the thing. The issue is that she's replacing a liberal justice. You know, like that this actual specific pick, you know, doesn't help at all right now. And so that's
she's
like,
going to give really convincing arguments in the court, which is going to get the conservative judges to agree.
yeah, her dissents are going to be so powerful.
There was some tweet about like liberals are posting like, you know, all these like quotes from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or the fuck she's called.
Yeah.
Like all over the internet, like painting them up on walls, and they're just like statements of L's. They're just detailing. They're just like extracts from like lost letters, you know. They're like after action reports of like a losing coach.
Yeah,
but that's the thing, though. There's a lot of attachment to symbolism, and there's a lot of attachment to figures. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there was a documentary about her a few years ago that came out, and a lot of liberals lost their damn minds over the idea of her, over the idea of Gloria Allred, who they decided who these people were, especially towards the end of Gloria Allred's career. She was just kind of chasing headlines and dollars. You know, she might have done some very noble things early on, but not so much now. So when you think about, there's a lot of these conversations I'm seeing about abortion rights and why they should be there, and it's going to lower crime, things like that, which I don't necessarily think that correlation and causation is one-to-one. No one ever thinks about the fact that this is like a healthcare issue. There's complex lobbies involved that I don't know if people really, and we talked about that on the show about how Planned Parenthood's involvement isn't what people think it is.
Oh yeah, man.
You know, like it's a lot more of a complex discussion, and to view the courts as like, well, this is what we need. We need more justices that look like A, B, C, and D. And I'm kind of like, I think we need more Chris Smallses. Because when you think about the power of organizing Amazon, that's a massive supply chain. You could bring capital to a halt.
Yes. And this is where, like, and so the hearing, right? And this is why I do what I do, because I'm a huge fucking nerd, and I'm sorry. That hearing that Chris Smalls was in, right, was the Budget Committee in the Senate, chaired by Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
There was also the president of the Teamsters Union. And now that's where what Chris Smalls is doing, Amazon Labor Union, fantastic. Amazing job. And this is what I love about that, is that, like, I'm hoping that this union is actually built in structurally with focus on the workers, right? Because like these major big unions have been, basically the people like can be at the top can just secure themselves. But the president of the Teamsters, and you're looking at hundreds of thousands, probably even close to over 1 million Teamsters, and they're the people, truckers, like moving, right? Shipping trains, shit like that, right? The logistical movement from one place to another. When you start connecting the dots, right, between warehouse employees, between Teamsters, between longshoremen, with the coast, like working at the ports, really, like, that's where you could shut everything down and like really like a coordinator, like really, it's like you could have trucks just pulling off the side of the road. You could have trains just stopping, at the station and not pulling out.
Mm-hmm.
You got fucking warehouse workers walking out. All of these things have happened separately within the past year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, the movement towards getting those to happen together, not easy, but that
And very
vision that
illegal.
yes, but that's the thing too, is that when you're coming to like at some point you're gonna have to do some illegal shit, right? Like, because like these laws aren't really meant to for conducive, and like the thing too is that even the labor laws that are on the books aren't held to. That
Yeah.
whole Amazon hearing was about the things that like were the way Amazon broke the law,
I
but
mean,
you still
some
have most of the
incredible American exceptionalism I've seen recently. The National Relation Labor Board, or what the fuck they're called, because
Mm-hmm.
of all the Amazon filings, because they have a staff of like 50 people or whatever.
yeah
Because of all the Amazon filings, no, the Starbucks filings, they can't process them in time because the bureaucratic pool is too small. There's such a tiny budget that like a few dozen Starbucks is asking to unionize. It's like they're like overrun.
yeah yeah. I mean, it's like the fucking IRS when it comes to actually
Auditing
finding
people
tax.
of means. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been audited. It's not fun.
And the thing
Uh,
is, though, it's like these huge leaks come out of like the Panama Papers and there's like 4 or 5 different like these huge dumps of data about how like the richest people in the world are breaking the law and avoiding taxes. It's like, fuck, IRS people, start there. Someone already did most of the work. Discovery's already done.
but I mean, back to the idea of like an organized movement. There's also a fetishization, and I can't say that word right, of the idea of unions.
Yeah.
And when you look at the bigger unions, like here in the States, AFL-CIO, a lot of these places are just taking dues and selling healthcare plans. So
It's obviously best to have them, but yeah,
it's
they're like,
it's very complex. I'm very excited and curious to see what happens with organizing Amazon, because organizing Amazon is a ton of power, and we probably haven't seen anything like this since the 30s and 40s and the 50s with Teamsters. And right now it seems pretty pure, right? We know about Teamster Facts and Mob that was involved with a lot of those East Coast unions. And this is in the East Coast as well, but it seems pretty pure. There's not any illegal involvement. It literally is workers getting together to get some rights. And again, interviewing Chris a little over a year ago, talking about the impetus for him to want to start a union comes from a very, very real place of concern for his fellow worker. Seeing people die on the shop floor is rather frightening. So the power that we could actually see by organizing to this level to shut down capital and listen to the demands of people should be something we are galvanized behind and excited to see. But this isn't happening in 1925, and this isn't happening in post World War II Keynesian America. This is happening at a time where neoliberalism has failed in some regards, but it has succeeded in the promotion of the self. And as we are more and more atomized, it's a lot easier to have contrarian outlooks on the world because you're so far divorced
yeah,
from really knowing what these things look like.
Amazon workers can't go on strike because then disabled people wouldn't get treats, whatever the fuck people say.
Yeah. No, that's fucking, who is it? Tim Kaine, actually, my senator from Virginia. In that same hearing, Sanders goes up, rips Amazon, but just laying out facts. Then you got Lindsey Graham, his bitch ass, saying like, "This is the socialist takeover," rah, right? Then you have Democrat Tim Kaine, former vice president nominee under Hillary, for the Hillary campaign, and he just goes he goes on this fucking 2-minute rant about how not all the people at Amazon hate their jobs and how Amazon's bringing a new facility to Northern Virginia. He literally, the bluest part of Virginia too. It's like, motherfucker, you're the senator. You're the whole state, bitch. What are you talking about? Blue section of Virginia. And
I mean, it's like it's America's so far gone. It's like if you don't hate your job, you don't need a union. It's like what?
Damn.
Exactly. And that's, but Stefan, that point is that the idea that all of these things are connected. You know what I'm saying? Because the thing is too is like the joining the union, and that the idea that a union can help you outside of your work, you know, is something that is completely outside, you know.
Well, it's kind of interesting because of how limited it is, the state of unions in the US and how they're portrayed. It's almost like they're portrayed much more as class warriors than they are, say, in the UK, where it's much more a normal thing. And so that is like almost a kind of advantage. But then if the unions aren't themselves actually up for it, then kind of, you know.
Yeah, the auto workers union is one that over the past year has been going through like internal struggle or how, like, I mean, they have a very, like, they vote for their presidents like the United States does. Like, you vote for like, oh, hey, we like choose some electors and they choose the fucking committees, you know what I'm saying? So they like Jason had mentioned, like there are structural problems with a lot of these major unions. There's, I think, ideological issues with some of the people who are running these fucking unions. But yeah, at the end of the day, the idea of what a union is, what it can do, what it's supposed to be doing, you know, is largely seen as like maybe HR on steroids. But you know, like,
our most effective union in the UK is like Stalinist.
That's the idea of union. That's what you say. People have the idea of unions.
The Rail and Maritime Union in the UK. Yeah, traditionally it's been full of Stalinists. The leader was a Stalinist. Well, obviously, not Stalinist. I mean, just like they wouldn't call themselves Stalinists; they call themselves Marxist-Leninists or whatever. But those sort of people, and they're very, very good at what they do.
Yeah. We could have. It's probably better than having a bunch of fucking libs as your union leadership. But and that's, I don't know. That's a very difficult thing, you know. Of like when we say, hey, you know, this is what needs to be done, right? Workers got to unionize. Unions need to be a little bit more militant in their actions in order to get, you know, really meet the demands that the people require, right? That's easier said than done. You know, what that takes is literally people standing in the fucking cold at a bus stop, day in, day out, handing out fucking a bag of weed to a few dollars to fucking pay the energy bill. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot harder than just writing out a tweet of this is what needs to happen and then hitting send and then going away, you know.
I don't know. One thing I wanted to ask about the Lawfare thing is if we should see it as kind of like a massive problem or just kind of like a cyclic thing that's inevitably going to happen and not as much a cause of left problems, but like just a symptom. Like you think Lawfare,
can it be a little bit of both though? Can you be of two minds?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wrote in the question. Like, I was going to ask Anton, like, how far is it one and how far is it the other? But I feel like a lot, it's just kind of like, you know, in the US, kind of there was this massive movement in the 60s and whatever, which gained all these rights. And then that is what allows there to be lawfare later on now or whatever, because these rights had already been achieved. Obviously, you can't do lawfare unless at some point the left has passed good laws, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess the left can protect bad laws, but whatever. So it's this kind of cyclic thing where a big movement will come up, they'll pass good laws, and then later these laws will be defended in courts until at some point they're kind of broken down and no longer exist, and you can't do left lawfare anymore. And then hopefully there's another movement. I think the problem is if there's never like a new significant movement, and then you just kind of have a race to the bottom. Like a big reason that kind of remaining in the European Union was defended in the UK was basically in European law, the kind of rock bottom of workers' rights was higher than the rock bottom of workers' rights in the UK. And so the argument was basically, we should stay in the EU because this rock bottom is higher. But obviously the thing is the EU isn't democratic and it's formed of all these countries. So moving that level is almost impossible from like a democratic movement. I mean, obviously it goes down steadily, but making it go up is hard, much harder than in any individual country. And so people were saying, we should leave the European Union because it allows the freedom for us to go up and down. And then as a left, we can actually change things and make things better. And obviously this was during the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, so it seemed like there's a real chance it's happening. But I think for a lot of pessimistic people, it was like, well, there's never going to be a real left movement again, never going to be something like this again, which can force things up. And so we should stay in the European Union because this kind of has this guarantee of this minimum. And we shouldn't worry about trying to actually make things much better, which is also allowed by the EU. The Treaty of Rome is the only international treaty which enshrines free market capitalism.
Really?
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so they defended staying in the European Union because it allowed the defense of this kind of minimum position, and because they didn't believe that we could make something better.
Jesus. Well, yeah. I mean, well, that's like I remember too. Like it was because wasn't Corbyn kind of like in the like on like a fucking like trying to like ride the fence when
Corbyn was always a Brexiter himself, a Leaver, but he was then put in charge of a party which was 90% Remain, and he campaigned in 2016 to remain in the European Union, and then and then Labour accepted the referendum after it happened in immediate aftermath. But then there was a slow kind of drip pressure from like radical liberals, from the Green Party, from the SNP, from Plaid Cymru, from kind of the liberal left parts of the Labour movement. And slowly Labour's position was pushed away from we accept the results of this referendum, until in the 2019 election, they had this really fucking stupid position, which was, we're going to have a new, Jeremy Corbyn's going to become Prime Minister. He's going to negotiate a deal with the European Union. And then he's going to have a referendum on the deal, but he's going to campaign for it to pass. Which, okay, like, it's fine, whatever. But it was just a ridiculously stupid, like, convoluted and complicated position to take into an election. But that was the kind of most sensible position they could have, because obviously, like, the Labour conference was passing motions to say that we should have a second referendum to overturn the first one. The first one doesn't count, we're having a second one. And that kind of weird, convoluted, fucked up position was kind of the best that Corbyn and the people around him could go for.
I guess what do you think they like should have, is there a good position, or is this like one of those things like, where like the left is just not strong enough to do anything
on the EU?
Yeah, for like, yeah, we talk about Brexit and
oh yeah, I was always a Leaver. Fuck the EU. 100%. Like no equivalency. Like fuck the EU. Always wanted to leave. 100%.
Fuck the EU, coming straight from the underground.
I mean, well, that's because my politics changed a lot from kind of 18 to 20, whatever. But one thing that always remained the same was thinking the EU was basically the devil, because I kind of came into my politics as an anarchist through the largest European anarchist movement, which was the Greek anarchist movement, is the Greek anarchist movement. And obviously from the position of Greece, anyone that's on the left is against the European Union. Anyone on the real left is against the European Union.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, and that was always the position I took up, and kind of my politics otherwise have changed, but fuck the EU, out of the EU always has remained the same.
Well, that's like, I guess, like the concern is, like yeah, we're like you say, like fuck the EU, and like, but like when the Tories are in control, what does fuck the EU look like versus if Labour was in control and like like
Yeah, I
how you
mean that's the
dealing
thing
with
that
it
kind
from
of the Tories will be able to make the country worse at a slightly faster degree outside of the European Union because the left can do less lawfare. But fuck it, like that doesn't mean I think my country like if we're gonna have liberal democracy, we should at least have liberal democracy.
Well,
Fair.
okay, so here's and I think a lot of people are possessed by the ideals of what they think liberal democracy is. And from the idea of lawfare, and in my opinion, the idea of police reform / abolition, a lot of it, I think, is constantly looking at the wrong things. And when we think about trying to find the right Supreme Court justices, getting the right person in office to pack the lower courts, there was something that Anton kept kind of hitting on in that piece, is that we are so far removed from the idea of working class movements that I feel like working class movements have been replaced by the NGO sector and sloganeering. So where someone posted something about Chris Smalls yesterday that I thought was funny, and I guess it went viral, where they were shitting on his clothes, like he had a stylist.
Were people shitting on his clothes? I thought everyone was saying his clothes look cool.
No, they were like, he got a stylist to put him in designer clothes. I guess he's been co-opted. So there's these people that were.
I think his outfit cost like $200 or something. GQ did
it. I you know what? And if it costs $3,000, I kind of wouldn't give a fuck. You're going to see the president. I'm sure.
Especially if he got them for free.
I'm sure that either he got him for free. I'm sure there was someone that volunteered to make stuff for him. I don't doubt
the same jacket he's been wearing for months, though.
But none of that matters. It's silly shit.
Yeah. Because I spent when I lived in Maine, I spent a lot of money, way more money than I ever thought I would, on a jacket. I still got that fucking jacket. I'm gonna have that jacket for another 5 years.
Oh, by the way, Marcus, do you like my Red Dawn jacket?
It is good. I was about to say it was looking fucking epic.
But my point is like, if you're already shitting on this man that's just getting started with something that could be kind of monumental, we're seeing something in our lifetime that, for me, I've never seen a union movement this big. The biggest thing I think we've seen before this is, for me, West Virginia teachers. Because more so than LA, which is a bigger teachers union that went on strike, West Virginia is a way more heterogeneous group of individuals that are on complete polar opposite sides of a political spectrum that get together and say, we're going to shut it all down for the greater good. Like that, those should be images that we see on the left and go, this is what power looks like. This is how we take it back. This is what we need to do. This is how we organize, yada, yada, yada. Opposed to, well, I guess he's got a stylist now and he knows AOC. So that means he's no good. He's a no gooder.
And this is to that fucking point. And actually, sorry.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to go on to say, the blow up of Black Lives Matter after Trayvon Martin, and then kind of the reemergence during 2020. If you look back and ask yourself, well, what happened? What changed? What got better? A lot of Black movies got made.
There's a Black section of Netflix.
I found out there's a whole Black section now on Amazon and Netflix that I can watch.
Amazon. Sick.
Oh, Amazon's got a whole Negroid section too. If you want to see any Will Smith films, if you want to see a Tyler Perry, have a Tyler Perry movie night, you You can do it now. But really, what happened, what changed, if you're trying to stop police violence, I haven't seen anything that changed police violence, right? Because it's the functionality of law enforcement that's the problem, not the people within it.
Yeah. And this is
it's the functionality of these court. That's the problem. It's not just the people within it, because Warren, during the Warren court, it wasn't like he was the nicest dude to colored folks, but you get certain legislation passed during the Warren court. So you have to have a movement that's really based in working class, because we need to understand what these moves look like when you have power.
And that's the thing is,
what I've been thinking about is, like, even if, because, like, say they get scared because of this thing and they decide, oh, actually we're going to change it, so we're not going to abolish Roe versus Wade. The thing is, even if that happens, abortion is still functionally illegal in, like, a massive part of America. I was just talking to a friend about this a few months ago, and I was saying, like, abortion is illegal in large parts of America, and kind of the lefty, feminist, liberal people that you'd expect to be fuming about this don't really seem to care. Yeah. And it's kind of like as if, you know, like, after, in reaction to this, the governor of California said that they were going to pass, like, a constitutional amendment to protect abortion rights in California. It's like, who gives a fuck about abortion rights in California? Of course there's going to be fucking abortion rights in California. Who gives a shit? The problem is abortion rights in fucking Texas and Georgia and Alabama and Louisiana and all these kind of places where they don't exist currently. And so I think either, you know, Roe versus Wade won't get overturned, and as it stands, people won't do shit about abortion rights in these countries, or it will get overturned, and then the focus will be on kind of doing this federal thing, which obviously still won't change the circumstances for these people. Because the thing is, what's happening in these states is there's a formal right to abortion, but there isn't a material right to abortion because all the abortion centers are closed. Weird that you have abortion centers. I feel like it just just happens in hospitals, I think.
Yes, yeah. That is part of it, right? And then, you know, is that effectively, you know, abortion is not available, right? Yeah. Like the way they say is, like, we don't need to make it illegal if we can make it unavailable. And then later on, you know, just to work on making it illegal. But that's the thing, is it's very much a, you know, if around these, like, mostly liberal centers, you know, like a state like California or New York, or, you know, like that's also the, like, a lot of the force that's you know, I guess pushing for some of these, you know, issues. But once they have it, you know, then they're just going to be like, oh, okay, I'm fine. You know, this, you see this attitude where, like, when Texas, you know, had that cold, the freeze, you know, system comes through, like, shuts down the fucking electric grid and all this type of shit. Yeah. You've got all these libs saying, well, you shouldn't live in Texas. Maybe you should vote harder and all these fucking things. You know, it's like the idea of, like, you know, and there's, like, Michael Brooks said, it's like, you need to be, well, like, just nice to people, shitty to systems, right? He said it a whole lot more fucking, you know, prolific than I did, but the idea that these, you know, a collection of individuals is somehow at fault for, you know, these systemic problems, you know, it doesn't, it's pretty fucked up, and it doesn't make any sense, you know, when you give it a second moment's thought.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine was saying that after this abortion thing was leaked, there was, like, the biggest protest in Seattle since 2020. But obviously, you know, it doesn't really matter what happens in Seattle. The thing that is important is if these kind of things spread to kind of metropolises in the South, because much more now, I mean, there still remains this idea in the US of kind of a state divide. But the reality is that there's like a rural-urban divide, or an urban-suburban divide, and so on. Like there's lots of cities in the south which are big cities which vote Democrat all the time and are filled with young liberal people. But these kind of there isn't much, doesn't seem to be much going on in these places. But it seems like things could happen here, and if there were like significant protest movements in these places, I think that would be a kind of a threat to how things are, and also kind of it would be a good way to kind of like recombobulate people, to like get into their heads that it's not like just everyone in Texas is like a Republican.
Which I mean, that's the thing, like that happens, you know, you know, especially too like a place like Austin.
Yeah.
You know, like those movements, and you know, like you have groups, and like I think Austin too is like even like pushing some, you know, like it's a low bar, right? Some housing reform, you know.
They got some hotels for the unhoused down there, yeah.
Yeah, which, and like Jason, yeah, you and I both know, right? Like how far of a chasm is, but it's like as far as what communities are actually doing, and the fact that, you know, Austin is doing that, you know, it just says something. Is it a lot? Is it the solution? No, but they are made, you know, like in some of these areas, like there are, you know, liberals and, you know, lefties and all this type of shit. But no, like when it comes down to these states' rights, you know, there's another question of cities' rights or county rights. You know, it's the federal or state, and like it's cut off from there. And that's where, you know, like I don't know if people are going to start trying to actually bridge that gap of, you know, urban rural, but it's something that's needed. You know what I'm saying? It's something that's like, yeah, I don't know, one of those walls that's going to be hard to break down.
Well, I'll end with this. This is for those that are new to the channel. First of all, welcome to everyone that's new. I saw some names I don't recognize in the chat.
Lots of people watching. Is this normal for you guys now? 165?
It's actually usually better than that.
Oh, really? Damn. I think it's better. I think that's better than when last time I was here, the time before.
No, well, that's hey, that's an off conversation.
Jason's like line goes up around this motherfucker.
Yeah, that's an off-air conversation. Saturdays are our free show day because so many people that live overseas, this is the one time you guys can watch us live and contribute to the chat, and I love all the chat contributions. Thank you very much to Landrow for his I don't even have a word to describe how huge the contribution that he makes when he does the 100 likes $100 challenge. It definitely keeps the show going and enables me to add new shows like the sports show that we do on Monday, the weekly now, or not weekly, but the monthly now video essay, which I have to, once I hang up here, bury myself in my place and work on and make sure that's out and done by Monday. But I do want to leave with this story, true story. When I was 20 years old and not yet married to my first wife, 1997. Not yet married to my first wife. We weren't married yet. We were dating. She had gotten pregnant and we were excited. Let's hold on. This is pretty serious. We got excited about this because we were young kids that were going to have a kid and we thought we were adults. But she got very, very ill. And I remember she called me, you know, we worked at the mall because that's how young we are, right? We have mall jobs. And I rush over and she's like, I can't walk. I can't walk. And, you know, everything is the biggest thing in the world, but this ended up being a very big medical emergency. She had what's called an ectopic pregnancy.
Oh, really?
Which can actually kill a woman.
Yeah.
So sadly, we had to have an abortion. I shouldn't say she had to have an abortion. And it was rough because, you know, at the time we were looking forward to the idea of being parents. And of course we became parents soon after. As you know, my daughter is now going to be 24 this year. So when I think of the idea of a right to life, whose life? Because there are laws in certain states that want to outlaw even abortions for ectopic pregnancies. The first thing the doctor had told us is, we're so lucky you guys got here now because she could have died.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a very, very serious thing. And go ahead, Marcus. What did you say? Something?
Yeah, I think it was. I guess it was when I interrupted you earlier. What I was going to say is that talking about even like the issue of abortion, and Stefan hit it. It was like, why are there abortion centers? Why doesn't this just happen in the hospital? And like, yeah, like that's something that I see as a problem, even like with the argument of like why they need to keep Roe. It's if this rape victim gets pregnant, and it while that situation is a reason, like you don't need to say, well, what if what if this one person gets cancer? Well, no, there's like healthcare out there for illness, period. And the idea, and like that the idea that this is like taken out to this, oh, hey, abortion is somehow an issue that decides the fate of society and having enough children and like the right to life, all this type of shit. It's just healthcare. And I mean, that type of story is like over and over and over again with ectopic pregnancies, because like you need to fucking get people to healthcare quickly, because deal with like blood vessels bursting and all this type of shit. But back in the day, I read some story of like someone, a family having to go before the hospital board and ask them to remove the dead fetus that was, gonna kill the mother. And like for days, they're going before the board. Their board's deliberating. The dude has to bring in his kids to say, this is a current mother that will die if you don't do this abortion. And they end up doing it. But like that's the thing is like, are there even gonna like a life? Are they gonna be those type of panels at all? Or like that's where too is like this idea is that it's something other than just healthcare. I think it's just this is incorrect, right? This is just healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously, in one of the other things they do to kind of reduce the number of abortions is to introduce all these kind of like bureaucratic things you have to go through. And on one level, it's like they do the heartbeat thing, which is meant to like guilt you emotionally, whatever.
Yeah.
But beyond that, all this stuff, it takes time to do, and abortion is a really time-sensitive issue. So beyond any specifics of kind of any bureaucratic interference, there's a problem in of itself with any of these kind of things, because they just push the time, and then yeah.
And let's end with this very prescient quote by the Dr. Martin Luther King. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. And on that note, everybody, we are out.